host, Grady Sheffield, director at Towson University. And today I'm joined by David Hall, the director of campus recreation at Quinnipiac University. Welcome, David. How you doing?
Good. Thanks, Grady. Good to see you.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to have you on. So let's get right into it. Don't take this the wrong way because I'm there too. I'm only a couple years behind you, but you're no spring chicken to campus rec. You've been around for a while. 31 years in the field, right?
Flies by.
Yeah,
Yeah.
flies by. So when were you first introduced to campus recreation?
I was an undergrad at Virginia Commonwealth University and had grown up and worked in like Parks and Rec, like when I was in high school, right? I officiated for the Parks and Rec department. And like many in our field, maybe even my era in particular, you're not far behind me, where I was like, what do I do with my life? I really like rec. I really like athletics. It's sort of my thing. So I fell into officiating intramural sports at VCU. So I joined a team there that Sue Ivy Bowling was her name. She was the director at the time, well known in NERSA. Somewhere along the way in 92, I think it was, I got to go to my first regional conference in Nashville. They're like, hey, you might want to check this out. I was a rec parks and tourism minor at that time after having a variety of different majors, and I was a psychology major and had a GA named Dave Heflin, who's now at the University of Virginia. And that was it. I was kind of like, I think this might be what I want to do. I think I could do this for a living. And was lucky enough to get a graduate assistantship at West Florida, which is really, for a smaller school, especially at that time, just a powerhouse in recreation. Bill Healy being the director, Dave Scott at the time, who's now the athletic director, moving into a D1 institution athletically. So they're growing like crazy. You know, that was got me started. It's amazing. It was 33 years ago. I walked onto the campus of West Florida as someone looking for a grad assistantship.
Yeah, from Virginia. Did you ever think that you would be at West Florida when you were in?
Yeah, there's this, I could tell you, I could talk forever. So sort of a quick, great story. I had, like a lot of GAs at the time, I had these options of where other schools, bigger schools, well-known schools, and I didn't know West Florida as much. And I sat down one day to eat before I was going to class in my senior year to talk to Dave Scott on the phone, who was recruiting me. They were offering me less money. No one in my family knew about West Florida, but they certainly knew about the North Carolinas, the Texases, those other places I was looking at the time. And I was like, I kind of like this guy from West Florida. I don't know what the deal is, whatever. But so I put a plate of pasta down. My roommate goes off to class, sees me answer the phone. Back then I had to answer the phone with a phone cord and a landline and stand in the kitchen. So I put my food down, couldn't get back to my food because the phone wouldn't reach it. And I'm like, well, whatever, this will be a few minutes. An hour and 20 minutes later, I'm still on the phone with Dave. My roommate comes back from class and says, he's whispering to me, you still talking to that guy? I'm like, I'm still talking to this guy. And I just had this feeling that that's where I should be. It was less money for a stipend, and at that point my stipend was $3,300 for the year for 20 hours a week, which was really 40 hours a week, right? Because we've all been there.
Or 60.
Yeah, and I just lived there. I lived in the rec department. I look back on that as certainly one of the better decisions in my life. It was a great 2 years. I still see those guys every year. I go down for homecoming. I've been part of endowing a scholarship for Bill with another alumni. They got me my start in the field, right? And sort of my passion and love for the field grew there, and it stayed with me.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you left West Florida and went from the South to the West Coast, right? And
Yeah, I did. I had this journey. I figured out early on, leaving grad school, I was like, eventually I want to be a director one day. I don't want to just do intramurals. I was at Texas A&M in Corpus Christi for 5 years, and then took my first director's job in California at the University of the Pacific, and 5 years after that. And that was intentional, right? I wanted to branch out. I was fortunate in Texas to get promoted there while I was there, which led me into, again, taking another leap of faith where I was going to be like a first-time director. They were building a building and a program out in California at the University of the Pacific. So I had this intentional path, also knowing I wanted to get my doctoral degree, of which Pacific had a program in which they paid for, right? That was part of you got tuition remission as an employee there. So I was pretty intentional right from the start on kind of what I wanted to do. What I didn't think of really as much was pigeonhole is probably not the best term, right? It's a little bit of a negative term, but I moved into these mid-sized and smaller private institutions in order to advance my degree, get a director's job at age 29, and then ended up in private higher education here for the next 26, 27 years, something like that. So wow. It's an interesting journey because I feel like mid-sized, smaller privates, I'm at a mid-sized private now, a little over 10,000 students, It's just so different than the big publics, right? And even much different than probably what you do,
Yeah.
where you are
Yeah.
at sort of a mid-sized, larger public at Townsend.
So 29 as a director. That's pretty young.
Yeah, it was really neat, right? It was like that was my goal. And then my goal from there, I thought, okay, I cut my teeth here. I build a building, I build a program, I hire some staff. And then I was like, I want to move. My entire thought at that time was to get that experience and then go work for like a University of Florida, like a Stanford, University of Texas, and be a director at a large school. I didn't really see myself outside of recreation. So that was the goal. And I always say to people, what's that?
What happened?
I always say to people, life gets in the way. Like all of a sudden, I had kids, which was planned with my wife and I, and she's from Virginia. I'm from Connecticut, and we were like, well, are they going to get to know their grandparents? Are they not going to get to know their grandparents? Do we want to be this far away? We decided that we didn't. We wanted to get closer to home, and we decided I would sort of look for something closer to home. We were following my career kind of at that point, and she had a decent job at the court system in San Joaquin County while we were in California, and Springfield College had opened up. So that was not a plan. It got me back home. So that was, again, sort of, I didn't think I was ever going to go to a smaller private, but they were building a building. It ended up being a great $25 million building that I got to lead the program on. And so I ended up, as I moved there, again, life gets in the way. You have kids. Anyone who has kids can sort of understand, like, then you get into a community, they're in school, they like it, they're comfortable, we have a good thing going, they get to know their grandparents, we could drive to Virginia, right? It wasn't like being in California. 19 years go by, and then to our discussion, I was kind of like, well, do I want to do just rec? The rest of my career, if I'm going to be here, right, I think I'm going to stay in this community. And I was very fortunate over 19 years there to get promoted again and do this AVP thing and learn a variety of different student affairs areas where anyone who's been in it, I would tell you, like, if you're doing, after you build a building, you build a staff, you're doing the same thing, you have to figure out a way, obviously, to stay challenged and do your thing in rec. And I was like, I kind of have this down. There's other areas in our student affairs area. I know other colleagues, like things need to be fixed. And there just so happens that there would be an opening, some staff leaves, and I got tapped to do some other different things, which were really great for me in my career. They were great to stay stimulated, learn new things, and not have to leave the spot that I was in with a family.
Yeah. So you mentioned you were there for 19 years. You
Yep.
take the AVP role, and then you decide to leave and go to Quinnipiac. Why go back to the director role after stepping up the ladder and achieving that high success mark of an AVP?
That's another great question. There's certain things you can see coming, certain things you can't, right? I mean, and I would answer that in a couple different ways, right? Once I was doing the AVP thing, I realized after a period of time at a smaller private, we started to get hit by the enrollment up and down issues at Springfield. And that's so true in the Northeast at privates and in the Midwest, even more so than the rest of the country. And that's going to continue, right? We could have a whole different pot about that. Everyone in our field sort of sees it. So that became uneven. Salaries stagnated everywhere. We started to lose a little staff. And I realized, I'm like, well, I started talking to a couple of headhunters about what I could do, still knowing I was tied to the area. I have aging parents that I help take care of, and my kids were still in school and whatever. I was like, well, I talked about moving into another AVP role, maybe at a lateral at a bigger institution, right? So you can learn more, grow a little bit more, do different things instead of being sort of stagnated. I also got to the point where it was like every Saturday, Sunday, if you do that at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, I was up reading police reports at my kitchen table, and I never had any time off, right? So I'm thinking about never getting a raise and not having any time off for like this 6-year period of doing this. And it was like, well, how do I want to do this? Do I either want to try to be a vice president, right? So how does that work? And I knew then I would definitely have to move somewhere across the country. But is that what I wanted to do? Those jobs are a lot less stable. So I eventually realized that I still had a passion for rec. I loved rec. All the cuts were happening at Springfield. AVP jobs were getting cut. Dean jobs were getting cut. So I was able to move here at QU where we had an opportunity where I knew there was some growth potential, not have to leave the area because I still am sort of tied to this area, and get back into doing what I'm passionate about. And I joke with my boss now, who is an AVP. He's almost just like I was 10, 15 years ago. It's really funny. He's 40 years old. He's just cutting his teeth to figure out that same path. And I told him, I said, I haven't had my phone sitting by my bedside now for 2 years. I work at home on Fridays. I have this great sort of balance of life again. It's been great. I've got a young staff who I really like, who are all now like I was 20 years ago, 25 years ago. They're passionate about the field. They want to learn new things. They want to be on committees. Right now, I'm the old cynical guy who's seen it all, right? Kind of been like, well, yeah, who knows what the future holds for you guys, given what we've been through and even the changes that you've seen, I've seen, and people like us have seen, especially in the past decade.
Yeah, for sure. So it's interesting to me. I mean, you made some major life impacting moves during your career. You're from Connecticut, you went to Virginia, you go to Virginia to Florida, Texas, California,
Yep.
and then back to Connecticut. You live the cliche in our field that in rec, in order to move up, you have to move out. Why do you think, or do you think it's necessary or true for that to happen in our field? Like, is that the reality of our field or is it circumstantial?
Yeah, I feel like for sure years ago, it was the reality. I'm not sure it's as much of a reality. And I did spend 10 years where rec was only about 20% of my job until these last few years and moving back into rec and really sort of immersing myself back in. So I had sort of the broader student affairs view for a while and wasn't just looking at rec only. But no doubt, you know this, right? Not to name drop, but you think of all the people that were our mentors that we watched. Our field bottlenecked like crazy when we were coming up. So if you were going to get a director's job, if you had some career aspirations, and if you were skilled enough, you had to move, really. Rarely would you be able to just stay in one place and then kind of move up. So I felt like the field bottlenecked. It was definitely something that moving around, was necessary. It might be a little less necessary now, but I still think that holds true in a lot of ways. The other thing I would say, and I know everybody's life is different, right? Everybody has families. They have, whether you have kids, whether you really like a particular part of the country. I feel like we're more provincial and regional than we ever have been, and people don't move as much. That's just intuitively what I feel like, and I see from younger people that I've supervised in all the other areas, and then folks that I work with now. But the other thing I would say is, like, the personal and professional growth that I had and how my life was enriched and the people I met by moving, it was the best decision I ever made. Just to pack up and all of a sudden live in Florida. Right. And even though I knew that was a 2-year thing, then all of a sudden I'm in South Texas where I'm the minority, like white guys are the minority. Right. I mean, it's half Hispanic. And then I moved to California where there is no majority. Right. Extremely diverse population. And I worked in all those environments and met some of the best people you'll ever meet. Friends to this day with so many of them, certainly all my Texas guys still. It just, again, the growth personally and professionally was so worth it. So then my perspective is so different when I moved back to the Northeast, even being from the Northeast. I felt like those were some of the best times of my life, being able to pick up, move, not have a lot of stuff to move and to be able to settle, drive cross country.
Yeah.
So I would certainly say to folks, if they can do that, if they're willing to do that, try it. It's just so good for you. And then learning those new cultures and how people do things differently. Even now, I think that serves me well, especially as I talk to my younger staff about how people do things, why supervisors they get stuck on certain things, why they do things a certain way, why this may not make sense to you. And sometimes it doesn't make sense to me. But I'm like, I've been at 4 or 5 different institutions. This is the way it goes. This is the culture here. We have to figure out how to work with these people, work within that culture. If there's a chance to change culture, you have to really be honest about whether that's possible and how you can do that from your level. But all those experiences really have helped me kind of do that wherever I've been.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you think about the work that you've done in your career, what do you think makes you successful? When are you at your best?
Building relationships is absolutely key wherever you are, right? You've got to be able to just either pick up the phone or walk to see somebody to solve some problems or be successful. But I do think you've got to be flexible. You've got to be a team player. You've got to involve yourself in a variety of different things that are happening at your institution to be in those conversations. You got to be able to do both. And you've got to be able to work with people. There's such power structures on campuses that certain people have all the influence and all the power. You've got to be able to be flexible enough to work with those people, be patient. I always say, like, patience, perseverance, those are things where they pay off in the end. So I think that's one of the reasons I've been able to be successful. I've been able to get some buildings built, initiatives, expand staffs, get resources. I think is because of just a way to communicate and keep communicating the message and then getting in the room at the right time. Those soft skills are key, right? I'm preaching to the choir. You know that, being at your level and where you are to be successful for a long period where you are, and we have lots of folks like that in the field.
Yeah. What do you think is different about how you do that now compared to when you were younger as a director?
Yeah, that's a great question. You don't know what you don't know. So when I was a younger director, my focus was always recreation, and I was moving forward to advocate for recreation and figure out how to advance my department. As I've gotten older, and the AVP thing certainly plays in when you've got to look out for six departments and you've prioritized resources, and sometimes rec would be fourth on my list. I would have to have those conversations with staff. That gave me a totally different perspective where now I will certainly be collaborative. I will certainly be a champion for other people and what their initiatives are, knowing I can still advocate for recreation, but be part of that, being a team player, knowing where resources might go, where there's limited financial resources. I had a great president at Springfield my first 10 years there who would say, he's like, I was ninth on the list when I was building a combination recreation, academic, and athletic facility. And he's like, I was the biggest champion for the guy who was seventh and eighth. Once everybody moved up, I got my opportunity, and it sort of resonated with me. So now I think I handle it from a more global perspective.
Interesting.
Yeah.
How would you define the value of campus rec today?
Our value has never been more important. Our field has come a long way. We have so many people now who have done such good research. We have so many people who have moved into these AVP or sometimes VP positions. I think we've made so many strides in the last 20 years. But for many years, I feel like we knew what now everybody else knows, like the value of recreation. We have so many participants. I'm about to do an orientation presentation, which will talk about how 80% of the student body uses our facilities and is in our programs. And we know the intrinsic benefits of increased self-efficacy, self-esteem. Spark came out, the book that Dave Bowles turned me on to that book many years ago, which talked about exercise really is medicine. Right now, exercise medicine is a actual formal thing. I felt like we've known that for 20 plus years, but sending that message, communicating that above, around, and to other folks, I felt like it took us a while to sort of get into that space. Now we're in that space. I think people all know the value of recreation and where it is. And now more than ever, with counseling services, mental health services, all the other components of what this population and younger populations are now kind of facing. Stigmas aren't attached like they were back in the old days, but the world is so different that they face so many challenges that we didn't face 30 years ago. I feel like our value now greater than it ever has been, right? With the Okanagan Charter and the pieces where we live there, with some of our partnerships with our health promoting and health education folks are more important than ever. We are in a good space. We're always going to have to find a way to tell our story. But I think now it's recognized by the rest of the folks at the university. I don't know if you feel this way or folks maybe a little. We were kind of, if you didn't advocate and you didn't have strong leadership, you were the roll out the ball, you ran intramurals, you wore shorts to work with a polo, kind of like I am today. And it wasn't important as what was happening in some of the other areas. And now that's just not the case.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that we spent a lot of time, not literally, but figuratively, pounding our fist on the table, getting people to understand our value beyond just rolling the basketball out. And I think you're right. I think at most campuses, you're viewed as a valuable asset. Now it's just figuring out how do we play with those other people in health promotion related to belonging,
Right.
thriving, all the buzzwords around well-being, right? Which we've said, we've been doing that since our existence. We knew that. It was just figuring out how to get others bought into what we were doing from that perspective and communicating it. So I appreciate your feedback on that. Dave, I'm curious, what would you say you're an expertise in as a director? Or you're an expert in as a director?
I would say I'm pretty self-aware and I'm pretty objective about myself. Just in general, like I pay attention to what I do, how I interact with people, how things are going for me. When I did the AVP thing, there was no doubt. I remember thinking to myself many times, and I started to say to people, I'm like, I am like a jack of all trades and a master of none. Because all I was doing was, I had 9 direct reports. I was doing everything I could to catch up, to learn about health promotion, health education. I was always putting out fires in residence life or conduct. So I became an expert in conduct for a while. I got to a point where I felt really good that I learned res life so well that if my res life director left, I felt like I could step in if I had to do that. Because that was my biggest fear, is I was going to have to do that and not know what I was doing, right? Now, as you ask that question, as I've come into this role here, starting year 3, I'm just about to start back in rec. Really, I think my expertise has become more certainly organizational administration, analyzing organizational efficiency. I've been fortunate enough to do some consulting on the side where I've done some of those external program reviews, which I really like. So I can certainly do internal program reviews with our own team. So that sort of lens in what I look through and the expertise I've developed in that area has lended itself to being able to communicate well up, down, and sideways. My writing and writing proposals has become pretty good because of that. So I've gotten good feedback, or I've gotten good responses from that, and it's continued to help me sort of get resources, get in the conversation for additional staff. I've added 2 since I've been here. We've added 2 more athletic trainers through a partnership. We're looking at building expansion, field lighting. So there's all these things, I think, because of my expertise in those areas, and because I'm able to sort of talk to the folks who understand that, the folks in facilities, the folks who are vice presidents, our current president, who really resonates with in terms of what recruitment may look like. I think that's where sort of I'm at my best, was when I can do that and sort of live globally, kind of have that vision. I don't love some of the detailed stuff that happens on a daily basis as much after 31 years.
Right.
Right now, we've got summer camps coming in here, and they're not university students, and it's like, how do we get in? Do they use an ID? How do we get them through the turnstiles? And I'm like, I don't care. Like, that's like an operational function, which we're going to figure out because we have to figure out. I'm going to be a good partner with my folks in conference services, but that doesn't kind of light my fire every day in terms of our work. Our work is a lot of what you just alluded to, is how important we are in terms of student health and well-being, in seeing those students on their journey for 4 years really thrive, really. And if they're not exercising, right, if they're not kind of part of what we do, doing something they love, whether it's a club sport, an intramural sport, a group exercise class, figuring out how to do that, how to use our organization to meet those folks and get them where to be, and then talk to folks about it and tell our story about it and collect data about it. That's where I think I'm best at.
Yeah. You mentioned the consulting. I know you've done external reviews. What impact have those experiences had on your success or engagement in our field?
Yeah, there's a couple ways I would describe what that's like, right? I go in and I talk to a vice president. One time I actually talked to a president, but most of the time it's the vice presidents, deans, whoever, and some of the rec staff. And I say a lot of the same things that the rec person is saying. I observe some of the same things, but all of a sudden it's this epiphany where I'm an expert. And then I know that some of our rec people feel this way, that even on our own campuses, wait a minute, how am I not the expert, but this person comes in and is the expert? So that is a phenomenon, which I definitely have noticed there through my work in how I do the external program reviews. The other thing I'll say that it makes me better at my own job, right? It makes me analyze as we're looking through, poring over budgets, we're poring over like initiatives. I'm looking through all of their year-end reports, all of their data. It keeps me sharp, and when I'm doing that for myself and internally in my own job, as I come back and I learn, again, where we may have gaps and we may need to do some things differently also. It certainly helps my writing, it helps my communication. The organization of having a day and a half where you're meeting with those constituents and communicating and then bridging that gap. The politics, it definitely sharpens your political acumen, right? I mean, here I am, like, when you're doing those things, what you'll learn is you want people to be honest. You want them to give you all the information. So you got students telling you stuff. Students will tell you anything, right? They'll tell you anything, whether they know it's beneficial or not, to a vice president, to a director, to an assistant director. So filtering that and then providing information back to the rec team that you may not provide to a vice president, and you may not put in a final report. Orally, you share some things, and writing, you share some things. So it really helps me there too. Think on my feet, be nimble, write a good report, give good recommendations, have side conversations with folks about what needs to happen. It's a really neat exercise. It's really sort of refreshing and reinvigorating in our field as you go do that and see how other folks do it. So it's a really neat exercise. I haven't done it in a while now, because once I moved into the AVP thing, I sort of lost, like I had a momentum where I'd done 5 or 6 of them and then didn't do any for several years. And I like to do them, would like to get back to doing them. Everyone's budget has also changed, right? For a while, people had the budget money to bring someone in to do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Now you say external review, and only certain universities can probably engage in those sort of things. But the one who did an external review for me, right, and you'll know the name Sid Gonsolin, right, who was Southern Mississippi, was one of the first guys to do these. This is our small world of recreation, right? Sid Gonsolin worked for a guy named Dick Flynn at the University of Nebraska, Omaha, when they built one of their first facilities. Dick Flynn was the facility guy as the president, or he was the dean at the time, hired Sid. And then Dick moved over and took presidency at Springfield College when Sid went on to Southern Miss, and then became really a leader in our field as he built the Southern Miss program, became great at external reviews. Well, Dick knew Sid. Dick hired me at Springfield College to be the director, their first director of recreation ever in 2005. He checked on me with Sid. It's like, is this guy a good guy? Can this guy do the job? Sid came in 1 or 2 years in with me, I think, and did an external review. Great experience for me. As he came in and said to me, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm going to share with Dick. Here's what I'm sharing with you. And it really was certainly very positive and got me on the right path to building the building, getting some resources we needed. And on the side, he said to me, we had satellite facilities then, and I had some personnel issues in like a fitness area. And he said to me on the side, you got to fix this fitness thing. He's like, and the student at this front desk, this person's been working here 6 months. They didn't know who you were. And I was like, well, that's not good, right? I mean, I come down here, but sometimes I see people, sometimes I don't. I knew we had some issues there. And I really appreciated that because I went and fixed it, right? I had done a cast standard thing. So I identified in a variety of different ways some facility issues we had, but also some personnel issues we had, and in areas where I needed to be more present in the satellite facilities. And I did that because I was in 3 different facilities for a while there. So that was very helpful, gave me a really good foundation, and then I experienced that directly once I got to do some of those external program reviews.
Awesome. So you hear that, listeners? Dave's ready to do another one. Whenever you need somebody, give him a call.
That's right,
He's
yeah.
ready to jump back into it.
Happy to do one, love doing them. I would say, too, to anyone who thinks, if you're beating your head against the wall, right, you're trying to get resources, you've got the same people in place, at least ask, right? Forget about who it is, right? Ask your supervisor, would you be open to doing this? I think an external program review might be good for us. You can help me pick the person, whatever it is. I do think, and if you're in a position for a long time, sometimes that also helps you think outside the box, learn some new things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your current team and department. How are you and your team viewed on campus today?
Yeah, that's a great question. And this is where I'll get right into where this is such great with the generational differences, right? So I came into this position and I've got 8 people, all under 30, directly or indirectly. And then we have a fitness and well-being director that actually is my peer. Tammy Riley, who's been here a long time, was a wonderful colleague. She's the only one who's my age, right? So everyone else, I've got this young, ambitious team. To answer your question directly, what I would say is, we are right now, right, not that I'm unbiased here, we are probably in the best shape we've ever been in campus rec here at Quinnipiac in terms of how we are viewed on campus, our output, how our programs are reaching students, the positive effect it's having on students. No doubt that comes from just this absolute like rocket launch of what club sports is and has been, and some of us have seen all over the country of where we've had this interest growing. Intramurals has grown, and then certainly fitness and wellness as the rec. Well, this building was built and opened in 2023, 4 times the amount of group exercise classes. So, and our team is seen as, and we all are willing to do, we're on task forces, we're on committees, we'll do volunteer work. We all just finished work in graduation 2 weeks ago, not even 2 weeks ago or so. So we are seen in a very positive light. They've engaged myself and my associate director, put us directly in contact with donors through advancement, and put us right in front of them. Doesn't always happen. So right now, we're riding a wave. We've expanded 2 full-time staff a year ago and 2 other full-time staff in the athletic training area with a partnership with Hartford Healthcare. We hired just one of them 2 weeks ago. The one before that was about 6 months ago, knowing what we need for club sports. So our staff has doubled, and we may not be done. We don't know where it's going to go. I mean, resources, as we've discussed earlier here, are a challenge. Any mid-sized private, especially in the Northeast. So we're fiscally conservative as an institution, but right now our reputation is extremely strong. So it's a good feeling. I would say that I'm lucky that I inherited some of those folks. They already had good reputations. It was really just my job sort of to elevate that nationally, regionally, and on campus. So I think we've hit a good sweet spot right now.
Nice.
Yeah.
So as you look back on your 31, 32, 33-year career, is there anything that stands out to you as a lesson learned that you still value today?
One of the things I have learned is you absolutely have to keep learning. So you're a lifelong learner. I mean, our extended staff in student affairs and my staff will certainly be the first to make fun of me for being dragged into some of the things that I have to do, especially when it comes to technology. But there's no doubt you have to have an open mind towards it. There's a no doubt you have to figure out how to keep learning things. I would tell any of the younger staff, we just had a certification for our qualified food operators. We have a demonstration kitchen in our facility, right? I'll just give you this quick tidbit of an example. Well, for an 8-hour certification, the university was offering that free to some of my staff. I said, you should take advantage of it. You have to keep adding tools to your toolbox. You have to be able to keep gaining and learning new skills and paying attention to where our field is going in order to make sure that you can stay relevant, you can be flexible, you can work with others across generational lines. I think that's a lesson, without a doubt, that I've learned.
Can you touch a little bit more on how you're doing that with the younger generation, given the changes over the years from when we were part of that younger generation? Because like we talked about earlier, right? It's not the same.
Yeah.
We our GAs, right? You talked about it, 40 hours a week, 60 hours a week as a GA, you lived in the rec center. Not anymore. Can't do that, right?
Right.
So, and that carries over to the full-time position whenever they come out of that graduate assistantship.
Yeah.
So how do you manage that age gap in your experience versus what the experience is now?
Yeah, that's a great question. Sort of multi-layered, right? As I try to figure out how to frame like a good answer. Here's not the best answer. When I got here, I had 5 graduate assistants, but because things have changed so much, they were out after 20 hours. Some of them had other jobs, right? And some of them were going to get an MBA. They were going to go into accounting, right? And it was like, so what I saw was, and I don't mean this to come across negative because it's not. It just shows what they face, right? In this world, they're trying to pay rent, right? They're trying to figure out how to get through life, get a job. So I realized that those people weren't really that invested, like in intramurals, or some of them were as invested in club sports. And I'm like, well, we need to be, right? I need to be. We have to figure that out. I eliminated all the GA positions and I hired the 2 full-time positions and I took the money and did it that way. And I've done that at 2 places now. And I've partially done that because of that change of where you and I mentioned what we used to do and the way people used to come up through our field and the way our field used to be when we had like an on-site career center at NERSA, which you put stuff in people's mailboxes, right? Those days have changed. Our students have now changed that way. Part of it also has to do with academic majors, which allowed me to do that because we don't have some of the traditional majors that we would get GAs easily. So that was one component of it. But then to your point, right, I've got, all of a sudden I show up one day and I'm sitting here with people who are 25, 26, 27, 30, and there's a huge age gap, right? I mean, they don't get any of my 80s jokes, right? But any of these thoughts of the younger generation doesn't want to work as much, or they're lazy, or they want to be promoted fast, all this stuff, I have not experienced that. And I just move forward and forged a relationship, right? I'm sort of authentic. I am who I am. They accepted me, and we've now developed this great rapport because we talk all the time. And I always say, well, okay, here's how I see things from here or there. How do you guys look at things? And we always seem to figure out a way to be in the middle. So if nothing, I listen. But so we've had this really good rapport where we're able to figure out and blend how all those generations work together. And it's refreshing. I mean, those guys move at light speed when it comes to technology compared to me. So there's room for all of us, is how I would say it, in this work world, and benefits from having multi-generations work together. And I think, you've got probably a diverse and a larger staff. So all that stuff really helps.
Yeah, I think your point is valid. And I also think it's always been like that, right? I mean, you mentioned Sid. Sid was the director of Southern Miss when I was a GA there.
Yeah.
And there's a large age gap between us. So it's always been there. It's nothing new. But I think your experience from how you came up plays a big part of that. Just like with your parents or whatever. It's the same thing. But you're exactly right. There's benefit, and we wouldn't be successful if it wasn't for this younger generation, for sure. And we need them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
we need
agree,
them.
right? Yeah, there's always that connection you're going to have, as we did when we were 26, 28, 29, with the current students, right? So you can definitely blend it. It's definitely good to leave any preconceived notions, any stereotypes aside, and deal with the people you're dealing with, and it can definitely work.
Yeah, and I think you touched on something. I've said this before. Like, it's about communication and the relationship, and you can't have one without the other. And as
Right.
long as you're communicating with each other and you're working together, you may not feel like they're as passionate about the field as we were because of our experience, but they're there and they're wanting to do it. So, Dave, one more question.
Yeah.
What do you think our listeners need to know about being a director based on your experience and perspective? What's the one thing that you would tell them for them to
Yeah.
succeed in the role?
I've said this before, and I know I've said this to you. I feel like at the director level, you're the ultimate middle manager. And I know that younger people may not think that, right? When I was coming up, I'm like, I'm going to be a director, right? You're at the top, right? You're the one getting to lead the department. I'm like, that's kind of what I want to do. Then you get there and it's like, well, wait a minute. I have either an assistant vice president, a vice president, there's a president, there may be a dean. I've got stuff coming down. I've got stuff coming up. I've got stuff coming sideways. I've got stuff from someone who's not in my division, who's in finance or facilities, who has a lot of power, who I've got to figure out how to lose a battle to win the war, whatever that may look like. I would say that you absolutely, if you're going to be a director, what a director needs to know is you've got to manage up, down, and sideways and be patient doing so. It can be lonely sometimes, right? Because you might not be able to explain in all ways maybe why you're doing certain things. But I would say you need to know that, and you need to be able to work with all of those kind of folks, right? The folks we just discussed, certainly the folks above you. Managing above is key, and managing up is absolutely key. And doing that is something you should definitely realize once you get to that level. You got to be real careful of any hill you would die on. You don't want to die on almost any hill, to be honest with you, right? You've got to be flexible. You got to be able to deal with all those folks. Quick snippet, like I would tell any director. I reported to two presidents over the course of my career, a couple times for a couple of years. I learned right away, when you go in to talk to them and they've given you an option, right, and they've given you time, you say to them, here's option A, here's option B, here's option C. Here's why I like option A, but here's option B, here's option C. But what do you think and what do you want to talk about? That is absolutely the way that has worked very well for me, especially presidents. Because I have a president, they've got ego, right? And it's like, I like option B, right? Even though I liked option A, and here's why. And I'm like, we'll go with option B. And when you're willing to do those things, yeah, it makes a big difference. So you absolutely have to realize that even when you get to director level, you know it, you've got a boss, right? And then there's marching orders, and you have to be in the middle and manage all those different constituents.
Yeah, great advice. Well, Dave, certainly appreciate you being on the download with us today. I think our listeners got a lot of great information about success and how to have a long career and how to enjoy it. So thank you very much. Happy to have you.
Hey, appreciate it. Have a good one, Grady.
You too. All right, everybody. That's it for us on the download. We'll talk to you again next time.